Hey, good morning, everybody. Well, my last video that I posted, I realized, some of you out there might not know what a Dutchman is. No, it's not a derogatory term. It's a term that's been around for a long, long time. So, there are many ways to do a Dutchman, but I'm going to show you a few things that you need to understand, excuse me, in order to do a Dutchman, and this is just the basics. You perfect it on the stump. But what a Dutchman is basically you have your tree. I don't know if you can see that. I'll make that bigger. Picking up that line so you can see it. There. You have your tree, and let's say your tree leans this way. Okay, so this is the way your tree leans, but you want to follow it that way. So, in order to get this tree to fall that way when it leans this way, you need to swing it. So what you do is you face up your tree the direction you want it to go. So this is your face cut. That's your face cut. Your tree you want it to fall that way. And a Dutchman basically is, in your face cut, you're going to add another cut over to the side. Now there are a lot of people who put multiple step layers in the cut. So you have your first cut, your second cut, and the idea for that is to get the tree to settle down into it. Well, a couple things you got to understand. Wood will only bend when it has that kind of pressure on it so far before it just breaks off. So putting a step leader down in your Dutchman most of the time doesn't help. So a Dutchman basically is you take part of your face cut and you add a second cut here. So this part here is now in your cut. So if you were looking at the tree, you put your face cut in. I should have got a fatter pin so you guys could see this easier. On the far side, the side the tree is leaning towards, because the tree is leaning back here, you're just going to add an extra cut, cutting on around. Okay? So, what that does is as you take your saw, and we'll pretend my pen's my saw, as you take your saw and saw into this, you're going to saw in and around and connect with your Dutchman, just a little bit above it, preferably, to where your kerth meets the other kerth just on top. It can be higher, but the more flush you can get, the better. So you're going to swing around and you're going to cut into that, and what that does is that gets the tree to set the direction of the lean, and when it hits this Dutchman, it'll roll around the other side. Now, if it leans back this far, you got to help it a little bit. You got to add a wedge, but you can't just put a wedge in anywhere. If you put a wedge in here, basically it blocks your Dutchman until you push that tree over far enough for it to set on it. So you're working against yourself in a way. So what you want to do is you want to put your wedge, say, here. And what that does is that tips the tree towards the Dutchman. It doesn't allow it to set back this way over here. It tips the tree that way, so it'll set on that Dutchman. So when you're done cutting, your breakwood should look something like that. So for an example, if this tree was leaning that way and you wanted to follow it this way, what you're doing is you're anchoring a pivot point on your tree up here, and you're rocking that tree around like that. So on the stump, you're literally rolling that tree on the stump. So if this tree was leaning like this, what you're going to do is you're going to put that Dutchman in, and you're going to get this tree to set on that Dutchman, assist it over with the wedge, and turn it like that. So it's not a direct fall, it's a rolling fall. Okay? Does that make sense? All right. Now, we'll get into another form of Dutchman. I use this on smaller trees. I call it a diamond Dutch. I put a short face in. I put my Dutchman in. And when I cut my saw into the back, I start over here and I cut a little over here and I cut a little here and I cut a little here and I go back and forth. And once the tree starts going, I start working that far side with my saw. So what you end up with on your breakwood, you end up with something that looks like this. You have a little diamond there. And as the tree comes around, you might snip off a little bit there. And that gives you time to actually work that tree as it sets. It wants to set back, and it will literally walk its way around to the direction you want it to fall. So anyway, that's some of the little tricks in using a Dutchman. You can't just get in here and go whomp and saw right in most of the time. You literally have to walk that tree on the stump and walk it around. On that last video, Swinging Big, that I did, basically we had our tree. I put my face cut in, and then I added a small Dutchman over here, and then I took this part of my face out in my modified swizzle. So when I came around with my saw, I sawed completely into my Dutchman. When you saw me on the back side of the tree, I connected my Dutchman to get the tree to set into that direction. And then I came over here and I sawed over here. I worked my way around and I sawed in and sawed in and sawed in, getting that tree to set. But then the tree wanted to set back, so I set my wedge up here. Okay, and I wanted my wedge up here to drive the tree to get it to set towards that Dutchman. If I put my wedge down here, the tree would have sat back and just squashed the wedge into the wood. And when that happens, you better have half a dozen wedges on hand to and a lot of energy and a good 45 minutes to an hour to push that big sucker over. But anyway, when it broke off finally, as you saw, it had this whole area here was the pull wood. Everything else was cut clean. So anyway, in a sense, once again, okay, we're going to fall towards the paper. You're essentially setting the tree on its side like that, the direction it wants to fall, the side it's limb heavy on, and you're rolling it around. So it rolls around. You're taking a pivot point. If my finger was the hinge point, you're taking that pivot point as the Dutchman sets away, we'll do it this way, sets away and rolls off that pivot point. That's your hinge point. I hope that makes sense. I hope that clears up some stuff for you guys. Practice your Dutchmans. There's many ways to do a Dutchman, but key points is you're walking the tree around. The other key point is set your wedge where it tips to the Dutchman, not the direction you want it to go. Okay? And the other thing is understanding gravity. Gravity, everybody thinks of gravity as forcing its way straight down. Well, gravity actually wants to look for the path of least resistance. So what you're doing with a Dutchman is the tree can't come straight down because you're not letting it. So you're giving it a path of least resistance to roll that tree on the stump, and it can go off and let gravity do its magic. All right, this is George Williams Sr. I hope that clears up some stuff and gives you guys some ideas. Remember, practice makes perfect. There's multiple ways to do a Dutchman. Be very careful. Dutchmans can be tricky. When they go good, they go great. When they go wrong, they go horribly wrong. I'll talk to you later.